there we are, and I am all alone. Oh, okay. No, Kent and Glenn jumped in. So it's always that awkward moment when I click it over, look over to the left, and there's nobody there. And then now everybody populates. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Whatever, it's Friday. It's Friday. A mild and gentle 105 degrees today, which is far better than the 116 we had. What was it, Tuesday? That was a little brutal. Little bit brutal. Bit rough. So, but everybody coming in. And how am I? I'm hot and tired. So, it was warm. It was warm today. So, but I got out of it and I survived it this week. And next week's supposed to be a little touch cooler. So we'll see what happens next week. But yeah, it's been rough. And I think the roughest part is we're back up around 87, 88, 89 degrees in the evening. So it just is never really cool. So that's probably the big problem. It just never cools down. You never feel that relief. You turn on the shower, there's no more cold water for a while. It's warm or hot without even turning the dial. It's just that place. So, it'll be that way for a couple months now, and we will survive. So, as the AC clicks on, which is very nice. It's a nice feeling. But yes, so it is the time of summer. So, greetings, everyone. Have you ever hunted? Hunted? Like, do I hunt? As in, bang, bang, I have a bow. I actually have two bows. I have a recurve and a compound bow. And no, I actually have two compounds. And then I have rifles. And yes, I've hunted. I've hunted lots of game in the past. Large and small animals. So, yes, I do hunt. And I did hunt. Trevor wants to go out this fall. But deer hunt, turkey, elk, hunting, yes, all those things. Bear, rabbit, dove. Used to go dove and quail every fall. But I don't eat bird for a reason, and because of that, yes, I do not eat chicken, turkey, anything like that. So I quit doing that, even though I used to go with people that did. So I would go and let them have my dove and quail. But yes, I've always hunted, and I enjoyed hunting. I enjoyed tracking game and stuff like that. I was not a roadside kind of guy. I liked being in the woods. I liked being in the desert and the mountains. And some of, back in the early 2000s, some of my trips in the Superstitions were, I'd be up there deer hunting and javelina hunting. So, and I think that's probably, I would think it's in the stories a lot of times. So, I saw like 118 out your way, new record. The record's 122. We're never gonna hit that anytime soon. That was back in the 90s, and actually Greg Baxter and I talked about that, because we remember that day. I remember I can't remember the guy's name, but I was working for Shuck Construction, and they brought one of the guys in. Had passed out. They were dragging him. God, trying to remember who it was. See, I can tell you who the guys dragging the guy was. Richard Schwent and Dan Bradshaw. And I can't remember the guy's name they were dragging. His feet were dragging on the ground. And they brought him in. I got drawn for the first time. Unit 27. Yeah, I had some... left. I hunted a lot up by the Weaver Mountains, Yarnell, that area. So I hunted a lot up there. I hunted up in the Superstitions, a little bit south of Prescott, and then there were some hunts up in North Kaibab. So, and Payson, I did some hunting out on off of Rim Road up in those areas. So, but I preferred the desert mountains because it was less crowded. And when all the guys were down below at the base of the mountain, getting up in the morning, firing up the ATVs and flying around after they've been drinking all night, I was the guy sitting up on the hill waiting for them to push everything up, because you could just hear them going bang, 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 and you knew everything was going to push up the mountain. So you get on that shady side of the mountain and just wait. But I also would do what we call ham season, handgun archery and muzzle loading seasons, and did those. I never muzzle loaded hunted. I never did that. So some nice trout out that way too. Some good trout. Used to fish a lot. Boys, my nephews want to go fishing, so I've been promising them for quite some time. So, boys, if you watch this ever, watch your uncle. Yes, he owes you, and yes, we're supposed to go. But I want to take them out and do some fishing. Good knowledge, buddy. Thanks. Yeah. But I loved bow hunting. I loved bow hunting on my own. That was something I really enjoyed. So I loved archery. Probably the most of anything. Just loved the feel of an arrow, and when you know the arrow is going to go true and all that. So, but yeah, that was definitely a big thing. And it helps you read trails and stuff, and it's a different way to kind of spend time in the mountains and kind of work your way around in the mountains. So yeah, but I used to, there was in a forum once, someone criticized me for hunting up on Peters Mesa and said, oh no, that's a restricted area and you're not allowed to deer hunt there. Well, I'm like, no, you can hunt, and it showed me what that person knew. Coronado Trail is up there. I'm more interested in the rocks and looking for Spanish campsite. I will hunt though. Yeah, but you find a lot of stuff when you're hunting. I mean, because if definitely you're kind of a solo hunter and you're working your way through wherever and looking for sign, you're looking at smaller things, which I think helped me in far as lost mine hunting and stuff, because you're looking for an ear twitching in the brush or something. So it allows your eye and your mind to focus in on certain things. So it was always kind of part of that. And you grow up in a family that's kind of part of, maybe not the culture, but it's established and something you learn. I have, what do I got out there? I got an old AMF bow, and then I think I have a bear, old Fred Bear. I'm trying to remember what that other one is. I think it's a Fred Bear. Trevor has a crossbow, which is a funny story. He wanted the crossbow, and I think if you watch our videos, the very first video or two, he's carrying the crossbow on him. For whatever reason, we've never understood why he had to take it. So he took that crossbow with him. When he first got it, he found out, one, you need the thing to help load it, because it's not like Walking Dead where you can just pull it and load it. It doesn't work that way. So he got it, and he got it set up, and we had my archery target in the back, and we had set the target up, and he fired the crossbow, but it clipped the top of the target, and it shot through a metal storage shed and through the entire shed and out the other side of the shed into a block wall and stuck in the block wall. And we were like, oh, there's some pounds behind this. So the shed's gone, but yeah, the shed for years had that little pinhole through it where it shot right through. But yeah, he has that in the very first Legends YouTube video that we were out by Black Cross Butte. He was carrying that around with his camera and stuff, and then shortly afterwards, I think he realized what a pain in the butt it was, and to haul that around and stuff. It's a cool look, but it didn't really translate, and so it stayed home after that. So, but yes, Trevor has the crossbow. We even have a slingshot out there. There's a little of everything. So, oh, my daughter has a bow too. She has a small bow, but she has a pink bow, pink or purple bow. So, but the boys never got into the archery. That never appealed much to them. So, there you go. So people know, and yeah, it's just. But I think some of that stuff. I know there's people that are into photography and this and that and different things, and oh, don't do this, but it was part of the culture from being raised in a family that a generation before, they were literally, you got up in the morning, my dad would tell me before school, he would have to get up, check all his traps and see if they got anything. And he said we had eggs because we had chickens, but he said sometimes you knew dinner would be rabbit or score something because the traps, you'd have something in the traps. And he said that is generally what they hunted and all that. So so you grow up in that, and it's different. We live obviously in the suburbs and town and everything else, and it all changes, but you still have that, you learn from that and the people that continue to do that. And so, and I loved to fish. I loved trout, breaded trout. So I continued to hunt and fish for many, many years, but I never pushed the boys into it. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it was just an old pain in the ass for everything, but yes. So the long story short there is yes, I have hunted and fished and all that, and I currently have my hunt and fish license. I always buy a hunt and fish license, even if I'm not going to go out. I have no intention of doing either or. I do that in support. Because it raises for Game and Fish, it's their main way they raise money for the Department of Game and Fish, and I understand a lot of the auspices of how that works. So I'm always supportive, and I always buy a hunt and fish license. And it is an industry that's billions and billions of dollars with everything that people purchase to do that sort of thing. So there you go. I probably, lost my vegan crowd, but I always will cook the vegan burgers on a clean grill away from the meat, though. Has anyone ever found any of old Jake's caches? No, not that we know or anyone's ever bragged or said about. There's been people that have claimed, but they've never brought anything forward, because you would be able to look at the ore and say whether it came from the mammoth, the black queen, something nearby, something different. You'd be able to tell in the matrix and so forth. So no one's ever brought any of that forward, which doesn't mean it couldn't have been found. Someone could have found it and just been smart and said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to ever find the mine and stuff. They could be still out there looking for them, but they just basically said, you know what, I'm going to be smart and just keep my mouth shut and just cash in. All my uncles and dads hunted. First time in my life I'm taking it seriously. Oh, that was a big deal to me, learning to track when I was younger and stuff. So like I said, that was a huge deal to me, because you have to learn. I guess anything I do, I like to study and narrow it down, and it wasn't just books, because you could find books back then, but it was mainly trying to learn something and then question everybody about game and learning to track animals and antler rubs and all the fun stuff. And my wife used to make fun of me when we'd go out, like we'd be up on the Mogollon Rim, and I would always, if I saw scat, look through the scat and try to decide where they were eating, if they were eating locally, what kind of food they were eating. Even here, before Surprise got built out, we would walk, and a lot of out here was farm fields and orchards, and there was a lot of coyotes, and there still are coyotes, bobcats in the area, and I would always look at the scat and tell her what kind and probably how old it was. And I was always surprised to find, you knew the coyotes were getting desperate. They'd be eating oranges. You'd find the orange rinds and stuff in there in their scat. But I always kind of honed that in, because it's you want to know what something's eating and how things are working. Now there's plenty of cats running loose and rabbits, and so they're far better fed than they ever have been. I got a lifetime when you retired. Yeah, my dad got. I remember he got his. Well, they call was it? It's a lifetime, but they used to call it something like historic or I don't know what it is. Heritage license. God, I remember they called it something. Anyways, yes, I remember he got his because I told him. I said, "Why don't you just get it now that you're that age and all?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I explained it. He was like, "Oh, he got his." And then he never went out. Oh, we went out one time. And then, for whatever reason after that, he said he just didn't feel it anymore. And he gave me his shotgun and told me, just put it in your cabinet. I don't need it anymore. And I said, okay. And so I ended up with another shotgun out of that. Bought my lifetime. North Carolina can hunt, trap. Alright, so, but this week, talked to a few people, talked to Shoes. Shoes is doing well. I don't know, I didn't, work was so hot, because I'm thinking about it. I wasn't on the phone very much either. It was drive, work. Usually I talk to half a dozen people during the week, taking a number of different calls and stuff. I know I talked to, David, but that was last Saturday, right? So, yeah, so that was almost a week ago. But during this week, it was very, very quiet. So, I was doing some research, and I got some files over here I was going through and different stuff. So I think I was just kind of concentrating on a number of things. Thank you to, he hasn't joined us yet. I haven't seen his name pop up, but Dallas Wright for the Peralta's book. Kind of running through that and learning about their California history and all. It's a bit detailed, but it's really, I've actually been enjoying that. Learning gives me a number of names and route lines to read. And then this one, the DeGrazia Kino book, which has some nice drawings by Kino in it. So I've been, and it's actually not just a book. It's like it's comprised of several different writers writing articles about Kino. So, very nice. But those two, I've been doing that a little. But haven't, like I said, it's kind of an odd week. I think it was just because of the heat. So, yes, Saturday. Yes, see, I'm not that old. Saw that Larry Hedrick posted a tribute. Yeah, well, it's kind of the same thing he said. You know how you do the thing after the funeral and you get up and talk? That was basically the little thing you get at the funeral. He kind of like read the stuff that was off of that, basically. And I'm sure he knew it by heart because I know a lot of it. But he kind of said that and then told this story. Same thing that he got up and talked about at the funeral, and that was it. It was like, you knew Clay for 40 years, and that's what you could come up with. I thought about doing something like that. There are people that knew him a lot better. And I thought, privately sitting there with two people, it's kind of nice, because I remember the first time I talked to Clay. I remember the first time I went to his house and met him. And those stories, we were all just sitting around at the tables. I was sitting with Josh Feldman and Brian Lichtman, and I was talking about, I remember when I first met Clay and the time I got to spend with him, and the fact that it was, I'm not a Holmes story guy, and I never really, I knew Clay was a man of faith as far as what he believed in, and so we never really talked much about that stuff. We'd share stuff from the mountains. He was always interested to hear what you were doing in the mountains and things. It was always kind of just conversation, and I liked that. That was the thing I always enjoyed with him. But the first time I talked to him, we were on the phone like 3 hours, and I kept thinking, man, he probably wants to go to bed early, and he was like, no, I'm going to be up all night, and I might as well, you can keep me company, and I'm like, and that was just him asking me questions all night about different places I've been. What did I think about this? What I think about that? And then later it would become, we'd do whatever we were doing over there at times. And then I would just sit there and we would talk. And we talked about life, and we talked about um, we kind of stayed out of the normal things that can cause people's relationship problems, but a lot of times we just talked. I loved the discussions we'd have about Dutch hunters' psychology and why people did things, or what we thought the reason was for why they got drawn to it so much. Perspective, and I can always, see him sitting in his chair, and I'd be over there on that couch, and that's a forever thing in my head, is just sitting there talking to him, and him, he laughed at his own jokes like we all do, and we would just sit there. And I remember a couple times we'd been over with Trevor, and sometimes we'd film him, and he was always happy because he liked Trevor, and Trevor would like, the batteries are dead. Okay, we can get going probably now. And then it would be funny because we would just, me and Clay would just keep talking and talking and talking. So, but that's how he was. He loved having company. He liked having visitors. So once he got rolling, if he wasn't tired, then you kept talking. And yes, well, we need to talk to Clay. Well, we could probably get it done. We don't have to take a bunch of his time, 30, 40 minutes, and whatever. Okay, we'll be there about an hour. Then we'll head for home. We'll get lunch and head for home. And then 3 hours later, Clay and I are just still there talking. And we could be talking about, straight six Ford engines or something that Trevor's just like, I don't even know what you guys are doing at this point. You're talking about things that have nothing to do with, it was just great. He was a great conversationalist. Yeah, everybody kind of knew, but he was very affected about, but he was very affected by, he thought someone would break in and try to get it. It wasn't a safe and locked up. There was nobody was getting to it. And it was magically would always be there, He loved showing it off. We were doing something one time, and he kept disappearing in the house and getting stuff and bringing stuff out and showing me and shoe stuff. It was always funny, but he really enjoyed company, and that was one of the things about him. He was always nice. He never seemed mad or upset with people. I'm sure he was when he was younger, but when he got older, the older he got, he just thought things should be by the wayside, and he didn't understand why people would hold on to old grudges or little problems. And I'll share here in a second a good story of him. I don't know if I think his son was Mark, I don't know if he did with Clay. Clay kind of had his partners in his thing here that he did. He separated. I know he had a good family life, and he did a lot with his kids, so there's that. So I don't know if he ever impressed that upon them. So we're at the Treasure of the Year Awards, and Tom Collenborn was there with Sharon, and Clay was there, and me and Frank and Shoes are out on the west side of the Mammoth, over by where the bathrooms are, where you come out by the bathrooms and go down those little steps, 3-4 steps. And we're standing there at the railing talking, and Shoes and I were having a cigarette, Frank's having a cigar, and we look way down the hill, and we see this, like, it looks like a little boy, and then there's this giant man with him. We're looking, and Frank goes, I think that's Tom. And we're like, yeah, who's that? Oh, that's Clay. So we're standing there, and we're like, maybe somebody needs to go get Tom. What are the two of them doing? And what it was is Clay, we were done, and this is after the event. And Clay wanted to get home before it got dark because he just lived across the street, but he wanted to drive home. But he'd parked down at the bottom of the hill and the parking lot, and he had to walk down. Well, Tom was such a gentleman. Tom felt that Clay was not walking very well, that he needed someone to hold his arm and make sure he was okay to walk him down the hill. Now, Tom wasn't doing so good himself, but that's what it was, the two rickety old guys and the one holding the other older guy up. And then Tom came back up, and he just, we were like, Tom, why didn't you say something to one of us? One of us could have walked Clay down, or we could have driven him down, or, we didn't have to go do that. And Tom's like, I didn't think about it. He just needed, he said he didn't ask for help. I just knew we didn't want him to fall, so I wanted to be there. And I'm thinking, man, if he fell, he would have taken Tom with him. So I was like, but that's how Tom was as well. But yeah, I always have that memory looking down the hill. And then when we realized that's Tom and Clay, what are the two of them doing? And you could tell they were not making good time. But all right. Greetings, Wayne. Hello, everyone. Gil Gold Prospecting, San Antonio, Texas, where every day is a golden day. But yeah, and then there was the time like we're in his camp. And Clay decided to have a nightcap. He liked bourbon and whiskey. And I know I was there. Randy Wright was there. Paul Shimmick might have been. I'm pretty sure I don't know if Joe Roboto was. There was like 4 or 5 of us. And we were checking to make sure. And Clay had everything. He had a nice setup. He was sitting there talking with us. And then Clay said, well, it's getting late, and the sun was getting ready to go down. And he pulled this bottle out. I think it was a bottle of Jim Beam. And he said, let's all have a drink. And that's what we all did. We all had nightcaps. And so that was one of several times with him. But yeah, that was always so. And then, of course, I told Josh about this, Feldman, but first time I went to Clay's house, I figured I'm not going to be there long. I wanted to talk to him. He wanted to talk about something, and I wanted to ask a couple questions. And this is early on, and so I was like, I got there, and the first thing Clay said is, have you eaten? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And he said, well, there's stuff in the refrigerator. I think you can, and he was telling me what he had bought or something. It was like, you can make yourself a sandwich. And I got some leftover something in there, and we can heat that up if you'd want. I don't have a problem with heating it up with that. And I was like, it was like the weirdest thing, because I don't know you, but you want to cook for me or want me to go in your kitchen and make food. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I didn't know Clay at that point. And then I went over and sat down, and we started to talk. And then he goes, would you like a drink? I'm like, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. And Clay did his chuckle and said something like, pretty sure he said, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. And if you knew Clay and you went to Clay's house, the countertop was always full of alcohol. So there was bottles everywhere. And yeah, I'm looking over and thinking, my God, how much does this man drink? And why does he think I need breakfast and a drink? And but I got to know Clay and knew that was part of it, was he was that kind of host. And there are people like that. Joe Roboto was very similar to that. Is they always wanted you comfortable, always make sure you had something to eat, that you were fine, that they were the perfect host and things, other than nobody sat in Clay's chair. Now, I always wanted to do it once, and just to see Clay's reaction if I got over there and sat in it first. I know he would have just stared me down. He might have laughed, but I think that would have been one of those times you get a little fire in his eyes, because I always wondered, what if someone gets over there because he's moving kind of slow and jumps in that chair. But no, I never did that. I always stayed out of his chair because I knew that was Clay's chair, and that's where he sat, and that's where he liked to sit. So, yeah, there was a lot of good memories and stuff. That's, but, I kind of deferred the fact that there were people there that knew him far longer than a lot of us, that had known him for 50, 60 more years. And I thought those people, um, Brian Lichtman got up. He got up and talked, and Brian got a little choked up. So, but he'd known Clay for a very, very long time, and I thought defer to those individuals rather than my silly little stories. I wanted, Brian. I thought, Shoes didn't get up, but I knew Shoes cared about Clay very, very much, and I wanted those people, if they wanted to speak, I did not want to get in the way of it. Steve Bowser did an excellent job talking about Clay, and and Greg Davis did a nice job too. Greg kind of like didn't get in his weird rapid fire. Sometimes, it's like you get an idea of something, but because it's a moment, and I think it kind of touched Greg too, because Greg had known Clay for a very long time. So but Greg's story was like the best. It was, for me, in a perspective of, it was him, Tom, and Clay, and they're sitting in Clay's office and are discussing the idea how to put together the historical society and what it would build to, and that becomes the museum later. And then the first meeting, which is him, Tom, Clay, and Bob Garman, and Bob Garman's son. And, everybody loves to get their name in there and wants to be like a part of something, but I knew that story from Clay and Tom both, so I always knew that's what happened. And it was them trying to get together because the three of them knew that they felt they needed to preserve what was going on, and with the interviews and material they had. Clay said that the ranks are thinning out. The thin part of the ranks are my age group. For some reason, there wasn't a lot of continuation of people in my age group. I think part of it was probably the closure to mining and the superstitions, and there were a number of things that happened during that time period. Plus, it was pretty violent. I've talked about how I always thought the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there was these really violent periods. And we did during a live where I was talking about the murders and deaths and suspicious deaths and a lot of things in the mountains and newspaper reporting and so forth. And I was so surprised that it was building up in the 80s. It was like 80s, 90s heavy. And I was like, wow, until about 95, it was like, whoa. And I kind of looked at it and then realized that probably during that time period is why a lot of people just like walked away from it, because of how bad things were. This is the heydays of Bob Ward and Crazy Jake and Chuck Crawford. Once they and a number of other people, I think things got a little kind of sideways, and that's kind of what happened. Hey, how's it going, Dallas? Yep, get out of the heat, Dallas. Sit down, have a cold one, and join us. But I think that might have been kind of what happened, because I remembered it was kind of the transition between the old days and more into today, which was the 90s. Things changed a lot. And but so maybe the late 70s and the 80s, but still the early 90s, there was a lot going on. And I think that is what, you'll find there's a whole group of people that are really into the Dutchman, the superstitions and stuff. There's a bunch of people under the age of 50 or around 50 that are down on that lower side. There's a lot of people, but there's not people between the 50-70 area. That's where it gets thin, and the 60-70 area is like just gets really empty. And a lot of the people you meet during that time period are people that I would say kind of got interested much later. So whatever happened, I think it was just the time and place. People kind of lost, kind of like wanting to do certain things. Well, I wouldn't go up. I don't even understand that. Okay. But no, it's talking. I mean, Bob Ward shot people and likely killed people. There's a lot of stories out there of a number of people and people he just shot and got on. But no, it's kind of, I don't know if I ever can find that pad of paper I had it all down on. It was surprising because even when I went to do it, I was like, oh, this is kind of heavy. And it was like a bang, bang, bang. It was definitely kind of seriously stuff going on. Cheers to Bob Ward. Yep, good old Bob. What you doing in there? Pang. But they were very, and that was something I told someone recently is, Bob didn't even make it to 60 before he was gone. So, when you sit there in the old timers, there was a lot of guys that didn't get to the old timer age, and that was kind of problematic too. Now, Chuck Crawford was around in the early 2000s, so that kind of made it for a while. So, but here we go, Bob. Mr. Ward. So, but it was a different time and space, so I think that was where things thinned out. So, you see that, and then you have a next crowd, and it's not always a generational thing. I mean, Jesse and Josh are a bit of the odd thing compared to a lot of families, because a lot of times the kids, Dan Hopper's boys, Bob and Jeremiah, were out there with their dad and stuff, but it's not usually a generational thing. Tom, after his dad, I'm sure Rick's boys went out because Rick went out, but once Rick wasn't going out, I don't think, Will and Jeremiah were going out. So I think that's part of it too. Do you think books and movies may have had that influence people? I don't know. I think people wanted the approaching technology and age. People still had a looseness and loved the Wild West. And I think they came out here and they grabbed onto it. That was a little of the wildness. You could get away with stuff back then. Think about it. You could go back in those mountains, put a bullet through someone in one of those canyons, and what was anybody going to do? They just disappeared, right? So it's much different today, the way things are. But yeah, the mountains were different. Society was different. And you must have been reading mine. I don't know what you're talking about. Shame you never got to excavate around Bob Ward's plate. Well, that was always torn up. Anytime there was a place like that, people tore up. We went out and metal detected and dug out there. There's a video of us out there. We dug up all over the place out there several times. There's video of us doing it. There were supposed to be stashes of coins and stuff, and we just tried to find anything. I ended up finding an old whiskey bottle that he didn't shoot. I found an intact whiskey bottle. So I have a Bob Ward whiskey bottle that he didn't break. But yeah, we were out there, and I'd been out there plenty. I don't know what happened. I know San Felice and Carlson and them were out there when they tore the building down and removed it, and they used it. God, what they use it to rebuild. What they use that for? I thought did they use it at the museum? They reused the lumber for something. But anyways, yeah, I remember being down there, and after they had torn it down, and then a number of other times. But yeah, I dug around there and stuff. You never knew what you were gonna find. I was so surprised when I did find that intact bottle. But I was kind of like, that was a day. Frank was doing something, and I just spent the day just taking baby steps, walking around, looking under every bush, checking stuff out. And it was kind of a crazy day. I remember I found that big snake skin, a shedded rattlesnake skin up on the ridge. Younger guys know if they can't dig, why bother? And that's part of it too. It could have just changed the culture, a lot of things. I had a buddy that lived on Peralta Road there in the 90s when, yeah. See, then they pushed everybody out. There's a lot of people. Someone was asking today about different. And I said, man, there's a lot of people lived off Peralta Road. There was little shacks, and people kind of was out there. It wasn't just Burns Ranch. There was Doc Nation's cabin and a bunch of places. Bob Ward lived in a bunch of different shacks along Peralta Road, almost all the way to the trailhead. And there was the house, the Linesba house up by the Don's camp. So there was a lot of structures and buildings out there when I was a kid, and they all started disappearing. And then once everything changed, BLM and the state trust got everybody out of there. So, but yeah, most of those places were just ready to fall apart. But Ward lived in a place up on Peralta, up closer to Peralta Canyon. There was a cabin there. I got it marked where it was. There's nothing there anymore. But he lived in a place there for a while. I know that. And I know where that spot was because I remembered where it was. This is back in the days when they had the campground over there too. The Peralta campground on the east side of the road. But Tom had coordinates or whatever. Tom was able to tell me where it exactly had been. And because I wanted to go out, and he said there's nothing left because the Forestry Service pulled that out. 1,000 nails. Yeah, there's a lot of nails. To get that mountain pretty soon. So, yeah. So, and that's that. The other thing is the changes. But yeah, there is a weird hiccup in there. And I think it's always happens. You have to look at another thing that happened is there was a bunch of books came out in the 70s, maybe around 1980, and then it's suddenly late 90s, and then you got Glover and Corbin, and people start self-publishing Jack Carlson's books. Look at the difference. There's a space there where you had the older books out of print, and then you got the new books in print. And it might have been part of that too. It was just, you got to remember, Bob Garvin's book wasn't printed. There wasn't like 50,000 copies out there. It was hard. When you saw them, you were like, oh, I'm going to get, because it was a rarity to see them. The only book I know back in the day that you saw regularly, and it would be in the Circle Q totems, but then the Circle Ks, was the Barney Barnard book. You'd find different versions of that laying around. They'd be selling those. And then there was, I can't remember the guy's name, his book in paperback, and then The Killer Mountains. Those were about the only books you just found. Like, they'd have at the grocery store, the little thing you'd spin around, and it would have paperbacks on it. This shows you how old I am. You used to smoke in a store when you did that. But those books were actually published, and there was enough of them out there, you ran into them. And now today you can order on Amazon, so that changes the perspective. Oh, what's the Lost Dutchman? Oh, I can look at this. Oh, You and Terry Carter well, me and Terry do get together, man. We do get together and hang out. Hopefully I get him out to the rendezvous this year. He couldn't make it last year because of that Black Hawk helicopter, which I agree, but Terry and I hang out. We talk on the phone. So I haven't talked to him for a month or so, but yeah, Terry and I talk and we hang out and all. It's just, he films me and I make pretty bad videos for him because I can't stay serious. But I've known Terry for years and I like Terry a lot. So, no, Terry and I hang. Have you heard from Sal about getting that box yet? Treasure box of chest. Yeah, the chest that him and Alan Tree and Dave Cook and about 50 other guys talk about, but they all have a different story on it. No, I know where the cave's supposed to be. I know right where it's at. And I'm always like, Sal, when you want to go out, let's go out. Let's get it. And, and he even changes the dimensions on it, because that was one thing with 4 or 5 of the people. I was like, okay, so if we're going to go up there and it's really heavy or it's big or it's awkward because of the area, what size is it exactly? Is it 2.5 feet by this? What is it? And it changed dimensions. And then, so I was like, oh, it's really big and it probably has books in it. And it's like, what? And then the next person gives me a different size, and it's like, no. And then the story kept changing. So it was always like, okay, if you show up, we'll go up and we'll get your box. And then the other difference was I knew the way to go up because Dave Cook had told me, this is where you go, park here, go up here, do this. That's where it's at. And then Tree told me the same thing, and then someone else told me the same thing, and then Sal wanted to go this roundabout, crazy ass way. And I said, "Are you sure it's the same place?" Sal's like, "Yeah, but you want to go do this." And I'm like, "Why the hell I want to do that, Sal? Why do I want to go out and drag myself all over the mountains?" Won't let us have fun anymore. You can have plenty of fun in the mountains. Clay was old school. That's what everyone would appreciate. Thanks, Wayne. Stay old school. Yeah, I don't know. He was very interested in technology because when we had the XRF gun out there, he was very interested in that. He liked science. He liked science because we would talk about science. And he liked technology. We always understood that technology, the advancement of technology, didn't always make things easier, and it didn't resolve issues that we have. So, and it was sometimes that was the discussion of people think this would make things easier, but it doesn't necessarily. Like an XRF gun, you can move it around and get readings, and if you move it enough on something, you can get it to match something you might want it to match. There's the possibilities there because it's going to give you a different reading as you move it around. So we talked about a lot of the science technology type things and what was the future would hold. Like I said, there was people that really had the right idea, but how do you do it? And of course you're not supposed to use that in the mountains, so that's the other way, is to get around to use that stuff. My dad and my uncle used to read Old West magazine in the 50s, 60s. Yeah, I can't remember. I was here in Phoenix. I was just a kid, so I'm sure I just heard it somewhere from someone. Maybe it was Legend City because I had the Lost Touch in mind, right? I just remember knowing just a gist of it when I was a kid, that there was this guy and he had died and told these people where there was a mine in the mountains, and it was nobody could find it, and people died looking for it. And that's probably all I knew right there. And then it wasn't until my second or third trip, because I got really into it. The first trip I read the books, but I ran into other people my own age, younger people, that someone had Barney Barnard's book, and they had bought it at a store like Circle K or U-Totem, 7-Eleven. They'd found one in one of those out in Apache Junction, and when they bought whatever we stopped for, snack chips and whatever, they had bought that, and then we all sat around, and they basically sat there, and then we stood over them looking at it, because that was so. I remember that. I can't remember who it was that had it, but I remember him having that, and because when he broke it out, we were just like, oh. Speaking of Sal, Sal's well behaved about things. He's very polite. He's very polite and so forth, and he will clean up. So Sal's always good. I'm trying to think. I've had meals with Sal. Sal's always been very nice and stuff, and well mannered. He doesn't eat a lot. I'm trying to think. Most of the time when we've eaten and stuff, he's like, no, I'm good. I'm thinking, shit, there's no roadkill here. But yeah. I know usually I'll be like, hey Sal, you want something? No, I'm good. So I know there's different times, there was Cobb's in some different places people would go to eat, and yeah, I remember Sal being around. And I can remember meals because I can remember breakfast with Shoes and Rick Gwynn, and Rick Gwynn brought his grandkids. Shoes' eyes got like Shoes likes kids, but that was cool. But it was like Rick brought all the grandkids with him. Free meal on Bob Shoes. And I remember Tom Collenborn ordering this huge stack of French fries one year. My God, it was like this huge plate of French fries at Cobb's. And then the next year he got this huge plate of wings, and he was trying to get people to eat the wings because it was way too much for him and Sharon to eat to Clay. I saw that. I was just waiting for the break in there. I could get in there, but yeah, the memories. So, and to Tom, that's the hard part is, memories of my friends. I love the episode In Search of Old Leonard Nimoy. It was a good one. Old guys use the dynamite. The one I enjoyed the other night was the Sex, Lies, and Gold one about Victoria Peak. They were running a bunch of them last night, so I watched that for a bit. And I enjoy that program. And Terry Delonis and Doc Noss and that whole story. Of course, I got a bunch of material in a cabinet about that. But, yeah, I kind of enjoy, was it Operation Goldfinder, which was the one in the 70s, and then they did that next one in the 90s and around the early 2000s. So, but yeah, that was a pretty cool one too. So, where are we? Oh man, time flew by. I don't think we got to too many good questions. I think we kind of stirred around in memory lane too a lot today, but that's good. That's good. I'm not. Yes, and to Tom, yeah, always to Tom, man. I don't think there was anyone that knew more about the mountains than Tom. He's someone you kind of sorely miss, and yeah, that's all those guys. I just miss the conversations. I'm glad, like with Rick Gwynn, Rick would not know what to do with himself, just call me, and Rick would talk for an hour or two. And our conversation was generally, hey, Wiggins, I'm going to see what Glenn wants. I have less than here. Coach Cheese. Yeah, we were at Coach Cheese Stronghold with Greg Davis, and Trevor. And I'll tell that story in a second. But, God, I don't even know what I was talking about. Greg Davis and I were down Will Hoyt. No, it wasn't Will Hoyt. Will Hoyt's that way. Crap. I've told the story. Anyways, we went down. We went to see The Thing. The Aliens thing. And all. But Greg and Trevor and I were road tripping around southern Arizona. Odd group. Picture Greg Davis in his button-up shirt eating a Dairy Queen dilly bar in the backseat of my truck. Listening to Iron Maiden, no less. And Greg had mentioned that he hadn't been to Cochise Stronghold since he was 5, 6, 7 years old in his dad's car with no air conditioning, blah blah blah. So we went to Cochise Stronghold, and we spent part of the afternoon. We got out of the truck and walked down some of the trails and stuff out there, and all. And Greg got to revisit. I thought we posted pictures of it, but yes, we went down there. Just for Greg, just for him, kind of like he'd been back there with his family, his mom, his dad, his brother, and they had made a family trip back in there, and he hadn't been there in forever. What is the cross on the DeGrazia buried paintings? And what is the cross on the DeGrazia ward painting map? I can't tell you what certain things mean on the painting maps. Dallas, maybe privately I will. There are 5 maps. I have all 5 now. And I understand what all things mean on most of those. And yes, privately we will talk about it. In person, privately. But I can explain a lot of it. So it wasn't... It's... Sometimes you have to be there to understand it, so you have to physically be in the place. Lutz, and to drink all Dutch hunters who have shared pictures on hello Wayne Tuttle. Okay, I think Steve just said hello Wayne again. But no, I don't have a problem down. I just don't want to share that public dissemination. Once we're done in there, I keep trying to get Frank to go back one more time and kind of resolve that. I will show some of the solutions to the maps, and you guys will go, And some of it we kind of were surprised we figured out, but some of it I was like, God, he made it actually kind of simple, and it was so difficult to figure out. And there were people I knew that kept telling me what certain things meant, and I was like, oh my God, they didn't. It's sometimes hard to dumb down when you're dealing with someone. He was very smart. You're looking at something and realizing what he's doing, and then he threw so many things at you that you kind of go, what? And it took me a while. One day I was just sitting there and I looked down, and then just something obvious hit me, and that was it. So once the obvious thing hit me, I was like, oh. And I was like, and I told Frank, and he was like trying to act like I didn't know what I was talking about. I was like, no, Frank, it's pretty obvious. I said, I think he was laughing at everybody, which is one of the reasons Bob made the second map and kept trying to get people, trying to convince people and stuff, because I think he couldn't believe nobody figured it out, because everybody was trying to think it was more difficult than it was. If one of Clay's videotape said something about if he died, what? In one of Clay's videotapes, he says about if he died, what he knew about the mine would not go with him to the grave. He had made agreement. Yeah, well, I got things he talked with me about, and he thought he was within an X amount of 100 square feet of like the area and this, and I know the spots, and I don't know. You know, it's like, I think he loved being in the mountains. That's what I'll say. So, yeah, there was many a times we talked, and he talked about a lot of stuff. I think he probably shared more with me because I had zero interest in some of his ideas where he thought the Dutchmen were, and I think it was easier sometimes to talk to me about it because I just didn't feel it. And I don't think he was trying to convince me. We weren't that close. I think it was just he could talk a little about it and stuff, and we talked, and I just, I just, I didn't try to argue it or say anything else. Profile map Hewitt Canyon, no. Yeah, as far as those Clays, like, he talked a lot about where he thought it was, and more as he got older. I don't think it was because he was older and, he didn't care or anything. I think just he'd get in a good conversation, he'd say things. Have any of the paintings been found? People have said several times they found one of the tubes, but every time they've said they found them, they've never shown anyone. And the museum was included in that. Someone said, "If I think I found some of them, would you be able to?" Blah, 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 blah. And they said yes, but okay. And that person never showed up. There was another person that had some of them and talked about it for a while. They contacted me, and I said, okay, I'd just like to see them, what kind of condition they're in. I've seen one of the ones that he burned at Angel Springs. Someone who knew someone there, because they retrieved some of the partially burnt ones. There's a newspaper story, and a bunch of the guys, DeGrazia let a bunch of the guys take the partially burned ones home, and someone showed me one of those from Angel Springs, but no one's ever showed me one of the ones that supposedly the sketches and paintings that he buried of the 18, or the ones from the cave or anything. Now, people have made claims about it, but like I said, never have seen any of that. Was Tom's circle ring Salado? What? Was Tom's circle ring Salado? I don't know. You'd have to ask Frank that. Frank would know. I know the one ring was are you talking about the gold one? Are you talking about... I don't know what you're talking about, really, Dallas. I know he had the one big ring. I know what that was and where it was from. He had that made. If a painting is found, could the state... No, they couldn't take it. DeGrazia state couldn't take it either. Frank and I always made the agreement of if we found them, we would... There would be... I wanted my first pick for one to keep. I wanted to put one on the wall for the find. I told him we should give one to the DeGrazia Museum. There was a couple people who had searched for them. I thought, if there's 18, you get one, I get one, Trevor gets one. A couple of those guys should get them, and then we should sell the remainder, put the rest out. Okay, circle ring stone monument up Fireside Trail, down Rogers Canyon. Are you up? Okay, I don't know why I'm not understanding this. Circle ring stone monument. So you're talking circle stone up Fireside Trail down Rogers Canyon. I don't know. Yeah, you'll have to. We'll talk. Because it's not translating into my brain, and it doesn't mean it's you. It just means it's been a long, hot day, and I was starting to think you were talking about a ring, like on his finger, and one of them was he had one made. The treasure hunt of the year, we're only making silver rings, and Tom decided he wanted a gold ring, and he had his own made gold ring, solid gold ring. So I don't know if that, okay. So you might be talking about Circle Stone, which there's a good book on it. Hold it. I'm surprised you don't have it. It's this book right here, Circle Stone. Ooh, okay, there it is. Circle Stone, A Superstition Mountain Mystery by James Swanson and Tom Collenborn. So, Jim Swanson didn't have as much to do with these books as Tom did. If you read Tom's Collenborn Chronicles, you realize who was researching, putting this stuff together, and writing it. And, okay, Circle Stone, yes. Yeah, this is a really good book. I think I have a couple copies still. I've gotten rid of a few at the Rendezvous. But, yeah, this will tell you everything you know. They believe is Salado. Yes, Hohokam Salado. There's a lot of good information in this. There's another book on it, and I don't know where it is on my bookshelf. But this has some good drawings and theories and stuff. Tom went out there with the archaeological groups and made a bunch of trips. So I got out there with a bunch of hippies that one time. That was weird enough. Never go out to stone circles with freaking weird hippie New Agers, and just things get weirder. It's like, man, what are you guys doing, man? I don't know. People can be strange in the oddest of circumstances. Well, yeah, go figure that one. Okay, so we're gonna start getting ready to wrap up here in a minute because I gotta go pick up groceries, eat dinner. No Trevor. See, we got through it without Trevor. You know why? Because I hardwired everything in. Everything held up perfect. Trevor's in Tucson. He's in Tucson for the week, so I won't see him till next week. Having done a weekend, your information, thank you for your time and efforts. It's, you want to share, disseminate, do what you can. In Dallas, I'm pretty sure you're going to find this down at the Superstition Mountain Museum. They usually have copies down there. I don't know if Greg Davis and I have been talking about trying to get some of these things reprinted back out in public, because that is a pretty good little book. Did I have the Jim Swanson signed it? I know Tom signed it somewhere too. But yeah, both of them are gone. Have a great weekend. I have one for you, Dallas. Yeah, Dallas, that's a good one to start with. And I know there's another book. I think it's an archaeological book that has several things about, and it's like it had something to do with Roosevelt Lake or the Eastern Superstitions or Revis. And it has a good deal on that stuff. So, all right. So, that being said and done, I'll probably have to reread that this weekend because Sky Cloud hung with us all the way to the end today. Hey, Sky Cloud, good for you. Do you think Jacob Walsh had a mine or was just stealing gold? He had a mine. There you go. We will miss him. We'll miss everybody. That's part of how they stay alive a little, isn't it? The memory and talking about them. Mellow night tonight. Thank you. Well, I can't get up and rant every fucking night. It can't be, punk rock, heavy metal every time we do this. Sometimes you gotta be chill and easy. And it's definitely the heat took the edge off of me today. So we're kind of chilling. But yeah, people got me talking about subjects where as we're talking, I'm in my head going through other memories and stuff. So that's just kind of, where that goes. That'll change that. Always appreciate info in the videos. See y'all next time. Talk to you again. And you've been... What? And you had been beaten on your dog. What? And you had been beaten on your dog. Rex today. I don't even know what you're talking about, Steve. No clue what you're saying. And you had been beaten on your dog. I don't know. Jax was in here, laying here, sleeping. Um, that's not Jax. Dex. I wouldn't even swing an arm at Dexter. Dexter, take your arm off. That dog's pure edit. You haven't been beaten on your dog. I'm sorry, the phone. You haven't been beaten on your dog. What? I don't even understand that. That doesn't even, you haven't been beaten on your dog. Beaten on your dog. Help. I no clue what that even means. I don't beat my dogs. If you came over and kicked my dog, Steve, you would be a dead man. Well, you might be a dead man because the other two would go after you and take you down. Then I'd put a bullet through you. But no, there's no beating on dogs here. I don't understand that. Okay, you haven't been messing with your dog today. That's why you're done. Dog's been here the whole time. I've been petting the dog at times. Okay, Jax has been in and out of here. Yeah, Rocky was even in here at one time. I was petting Rocky while we were doing this. I don't think Dexter didn't make an appearance. Anyhows, I don't know, beating on your dogs. I think he means petting on the dogs. You can hear me pet the dogs. Today I was scratching them on the heads right here. So, because you can't see my arms, you can't see them because they're way down below here. But yeah, so we'll have to have the dog cam. We'll have to have a separate camera feed where I can click it over and everybody can see the dog feed of the dogs to make sure they're all fine. But yeah, I can hear the dogs walking in the wood in there. They're clicking around. Well, speak of the devil, here is... That's Rocky. Rocky said, "You got a beat on me, buddy. You got a beat on me, daddy." And now I hear faster clicking because you know what that is, Steve? No, he's not coming. He's in there just wagging his tail. And usually that means the other one comes. Yes. What are you doing? What? Go get him. Okay, they're going to start barking. So everybody have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. When you're up, a nicer acoustic intro. I've talked to Trevor about it, of doing something a little different. I wanted, we're coming up on X amount of years of doing different things and kind of like knock that out. So yes, I'm going to start looking at ideas. I'd like some interim stuff and other things I can pull up. I'm trying to work on Trevor doing that, but like I said, this week's at a loss because of that. But yeah, it would be cool to do certain things and break in and out of things and all. But anyways, thanks everybody. Thank you for everything. We'll be recirculating back into our annual, a video that's very annual. Please watch it and at least give it a watch or two so it stays out there enough so it gets people's attention, because it's an important video for a lot of people out there, including each and every one of us. Keep us all around, because we talk about things thinning out. We don't need them to thin any more than that. Take care. Have a great weekend. Catch the Chasing Legends Monday. We will catch you back next Friday live. It's getting better because the summer's coming down to a close. There you go. Thank you much. I told Trevor I was going to start calling this, what did I say? Now I can't even remember what I told him I'm renaming the Live Legends show, and he says, what are you? And I can't remember what I was going to call this. So Live Legends had a new name, and that I forgot. It was too hot today. It's somewhere downtown Phoenix. The corner of 15th Ave and Grant. I must have left it down there on the curbside because, damn, I told him. It was, who knows what I came up with what I thought was a funny idea, and Trevor gave me a horrified look that I was going to rename the show that, and I didn't even tell him I was joking if I wanted to use it today, and fortunately for him, I cannot remind myself. Anyways, anyhow, okay, there we are. Everyone have a great rest of the week. We will catch you next time on Live Have a good night, and hasta la vista.